Yeah, we'll attempt to. I think, as ever, very, very informative week over at Newmarket. 3 good days. Maybe a little bit thin on the ground quality-wise, I thought yesterday, but the first 2 days bang on scratch there.
Yeah, it was good racing. We saw a lot of yards that are in good form. Charlie Appleby had a tremendous period of time, didn't he? And,
yeah.
And they didn't really miss. I think he's operating just under a 50% strike rate with his runners to date in this country, and they looked set for another solid season, and that it's just turned into a powerhouse stable.
I wonder how good New Science is going to be, who was the winner of the European Free Handicap listed. We'll take a look back at his win earlier in the week on Tuesday afternoon. I was lucky enough to see him in Dubai. He didn't show his best in Dubai, but as Charlie Appleby said in his pre-race interview, excellent interview it was as well, with Lydia, really informative. It has happened. They've taken horses out there with big profiles or likeable winning profiles to Maiden. It hasn't happened for them there, but he was positive. He was quite bullish actually before this run, and the horse didn't let him down.
No, and he sort of travelled through the race beautifully, didn't he? And yeah. I kind of felt when we last saw him in Maiden, he never really looked like he was ever going to be going to win the race. He obviously didn't run badly, but it just didn't look very comfortable. And on this occasion, you can see him on the wing there, which is no disadvantage. He travelled in Williams' hands nicely, and when Williams as the pace of the race increased, I could just see him improving and walking into it very well.
Charlie Appleby nominated straight after, and I know a lot of people, myself included, loved that steer when a long-range target, if you will, is nominated. The Jersey was the race talked about, and he'd be exactly that kind of profile horse, wouldn't he?
I would have thought so. It looks sort of a natural progression, doesn't it?
Yeah.
7 furlongs is no problem. I would have thought a stiff 7 furlongs at Ascot would be right up his street. And I just loved the way he sort of looked like he was climbing up in the air a bit. And when William really sort of went into him, and you could see him just challenging the Hannon horse on his inside in the yellow colours there under Ryan Moore, and he hit the rising ground. He really galloped out well, and he's an impressive individual.
Market leaders second and third, Tuckerid Bay and Ribby 9-4 joint favourites. Remarkable in the way that this horse didn't go off favourite.
I just want to give a mention to Marcus Tregonen's horse in third there. I would have thought he'd be much better for the run. Is not a slow individual, and there may be scope to play around with the trip with him going forward, but I would have thought that just take the freshness out of him.
Being Ribby. So we'll just take the closing stages once again. So theoretically, in a couple of months' time, Royal Meeting, we'll be seeing this fella in the Jersey.
I would have thought so, and it kind of just tells you the strength of Charlie Appleby's colts, doesn't it, when he's winning this race with,
I think so,
with a really likeable type, and they're sort of mapping out a Group 3 campaign. It kind of tells you where the sort of level of those 3-year-old colts are.
You just feel like there's different rungs to it, don't you? Because, of course, the big two, the 3-year-olds, the big two at this sort of trip, if you will, one raced and one exercised on Wednesday. It is just a case of flexing the muscles.
Yeah, and I always feel, in my opinion, with Charlie's team now, it's all very well planned. You know, he has something in mind, and as best they can, as long as horses remain healthy, they try and stick to it. They don't really tweak things too much from a options point of view. They run where they say they're going to go.
Yeah. Very informative race as well was the Earl of Sefton, which was won by the same connections. It was won by Master of the Seas, who this time last year was second in the 2,000 Guineas, of course, to Jim Bolger's horse, Poetic Force. That was quite striking. I think there's every reason to think that he is going to have a very, very fruitful 4-year-old year. I mean, we'll see the performance now. The market suggested he was likely to go close on this occasion, but that was classy enough, I thought.
Yeah, it was a very smooth performance. Magellan's a good solid yardstick, and in this race, he's a horse who they've always given out that he's got plenty of ability, and we've seen flashes of it in the past, haven't we? But he's been a bit of a boyo, and it's interesting he's been gelded, and he seems a bit of an easier entity now, and that's going to help things going forward for sure. It was
a disappointing end to last year. We all know what happened, but he had enough form and ability to suggest that he's going to have quite a good season. I've got him on side, and I quite like the way that afterwards Charlie Appleby wasn't keen to say, look, let's go and take on Eydon at Newbury. Let's wait till Royal Ascot and the Queen Anne, give him that little bit longer, and don't go to war with him just too soon enough.
And it's interesting, Nick, you know, when you watch him through the race there, he's travelling so strongly.
He was, yeah.
It was a very smooth victory in regards of, it almost looked like he was half pace, and I would have thought the tempo in a proper 8 furlong Group 1 will really suit him, and who knows where he'll end up. On ratings, he was due to give a performance like this, but it's just good to see him putting it together.
What do you think the Gosdens are going to want to do with Magellan the second? Where would be the next port of call for him?
Avoid Master of the Seas, I'd say. Again, it was an encouraging run.
Yeah.
He's a likeable type, but they've just bumped into a horse who's potentially a Group 1 individual going forward.
Do you think he will win one by the end of the year?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
I do, yeah. I think...
domestically?
It'll be interesting to see how they play it, but they've got options. You know, they can travel him, and if he's a bit more straightforward and a bit of an easier entity to deal with going forward, I'm sure those abroad trips would definitely be something they'd play around with.
Do you think that there could be a chance? I mean, obviously, he's done the mile of one there. We'll take the closing angles and the different angles that we've got here. Do you think there's a chance that he won't necessarily meet Baid? Because if Baid goes to the Lockinge, they could look to step him up for the Prince of Wales. I think the Queen Anne's probably the likely destination for him then. But he's sort of the standout miler from last year. This guy's, I don't know, one of the younger pretenders, same age of course, but one of the sort of lightly raced, and we haven't entirely got our hand with him. Do you think there's a chance that he could avoid Baid altogether?
I would have thought at some stage I'll meet up later in the year.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be imminent. I feel obviously Baid's got to come through the Lockinge Challenge and see where he stands with that, and I think when you hear people talking about him going forward, there's definitely going to be the mile and a quarter is going to be tested at some stage.
So this is a Group 1 winner in waiting, according to George Baker, which is quite exciting. But there are opportunities. It is, but there are opportunities. You know, come the middle of summer in August and so on, when you get races over in France as well, the opportunities to travel and not actually have to travel too far to pick up one.
And I don't think he's a slow horse, Nick.
No,
so
I agree.
I would say, there's potential for him to go to America. That Charlie's been very, very clever placing these types of horses, finding good opportunities for them at the top level, and I'm sure they'll be keen to do that going forward.
What did we see in the Nell Gwyn? Did we see a classic winner?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I thought she was. It's great. She had a busy campaign last year, didn't she?
She did, yeah.
And as a physical, she was always a big girl last year, and I felt she's done well. I only saw her in the paddock on the TV, but everyone I know that was there on the day said she's done well from 2 to 3, and she travelled beautifully. She's very straightforward. You can see her racing sort of on the wing on her own early doors. She's got a likeable attitude, and I felt when she was in front, she was just doing enough to keep William happy.
Got a lot of racing into her last year, didn't they? That was hard, and you do. It is that age-old thing going in from 2 to 3. The ones that have been busier, are they likely to have left everything behind at 2? But on this evidence, no, which is good. Exactly what you said. And
I heard Jake Warren being interviewed how they, when they buy horses for high clear at the breeze-ups, they are keen to campaign them aggressively as 2-year-olds. That's their sort of remit, and she stood up to it great. But she's done very well from 2 to 3.
She is, yeah.
And is she a Group 1 filly? You just don't know where you stand with her at the moment. This was not the deepest race, in my opinion, but she's done nothing to hinder that, and I felt that she was doing enough to keep William happy in front, so she looked fit and well. It'll be interesting to see how she gets on in the Guineas, but she probably needs to take a bit of jump of improvement again to be competitive at Group 1 level.
Yeah. Amon Hadesa was second. Hello you from Perfect News as well. In the places, others to note, anything else that you'd sort of drag out of the race going forward?
Not really. I thought she was very smooth in victory. She was a likeable type last year, and it's just great to see them come back. She was, as you say, campaigned aggressively last year.
Yeah.
And she's hardy, and she's a really, really likeable type.
But that's the thing with campaigning them aggressive. You know better than I would that you're only going to do it if they're showing you the right signs at home and on the track as well. And look, she had a fruitful trip in ways over to the Breeders' Cup last year. She was third and beaten under 3 lengths by Inspiral in the Fillies Mile. Now, some people would say Inspiral, given the way that she raced on the track that day, could have been value for further, could have won that race further. But she'd have every right to turn up in the Guineas and give another bold show. She handles the track, which is a great tick.
Exactly, and I think for her, she's just got a great attitude. She's very straightforward. She sort of, as we saw on that occasion, she raced away from the field and just does her own thing. She's straightforward. She's a jockey's dream in many respects. You can sort of put her where you want and keep things straightforward. And it'll be really interesting to see how she gets on when she sort of moves up to that next level.
Okay, so predictions-wise, is Cachet, what's she going to achieve by the end of the year, do you think?
Well, she's with a very good young trainer who's doing tremendously well with his team of horses and went from strength to strength last year. He places horses beautifully, and I'm sure they have a plan, but they'll definitely they'll dip the toe at the classic level and see where they stand. Yeah, I mean, in ways, if she handles her racing as well as she did last year and she keeps thriving, and you assume that, the Guineas, 8 Guineas, there may be a crack at the coronation, suddenly she could
turn up in a Falmouth as well. There's every reason to think that all the big days are very much ahead of her.
Yeah, and she's a Group 3 winner at 3. The aim will be to win a Group 2 and win a Group 1. You're thinking about future life now, aren't you? It's as well as giving the High Clear guys a good syndicate and enjoying their days racing.
On the same day, the 4:10, the race that followed was a Fillies Maiden, and it was won by Crenell. She was the 6-5 favourite for John and Thady Gosden with Frankie Dettori aboard. She did it just from St Fontaine in second.
Yeah, and I thought it was a smooth performance. It never really... she only won a neck, but it just looked like she was doing an up in front neck, didn't it? It was an interesting race. You can see her there in the judgment colours, sort of a row further back. Just off the leaders, 2 rows back, and travelled pretty smoothly throughout, almost quite freshly in Frankie's hands.
She is a daughter of Kingman. She'd of course had that one start which was at the turn of the month. It's obviously just her second start, and they got a couple of runs into her within the space of a couple of weeks. She was just denied at Southwell back on the 1st of April, and she of course never saw the track at 2. Totally different filly to Cachet, but there's no reason why she can't make up into something quite useful as well.
I agree. I thought Kevin Ryan's filly was very...
Definitely.
Almost did too much in front, Nick, didn't she? And I think you can upgrade her performance. She's only beaten the neck, and there's definitely, when she learns to harness that energy in the right direction, she'll be seen to better effect. It's just that kind
of meeting as well. While you have the classic trials, when we talk about the Roger Varian 2-year-old who launched himself onto the scene yesterday, it's these kind of races that, in a couple of months' time, it's very obvious to say that you want to unpick and look back on, and they're likely to have thrown up a fair few winners, to say the least.
I completely agree, Nick. I think it's very informative, and I was listening to Lydia Hislop talk. Watching these races, you've got to have a handful of run-throughs and just see what's run well. And I didn't notice firsthand a few of in these races, so it's informative for the viewers to make sure they watch them back and keep a sort of a good mindful vision of what they're going to do going forward.
The pair were well clear, and you can see the Frankie Dettori just edging out Crenell, who is now a winning daughter, another winning daughter of Kingman. And I tell you what, an honourable mention on the day as well, although she obviously doesn't have the same sort of, I don't know, sexy or unexposed profile as some, and she's reached her level. Gale Force Mayer, when she gets onto the Rowley Mile course, and she just denied Bergerac in that great finish, she's really quite potent at Newmarket, isn't she?
Yeah, it was so tight, that race.
It was,
wasn't it? On the line, it kind of looked like a dead heat, but again, it's very... When you handle the track there, and in those types of races, they run at a good tempo. It's a massive help.
I wrongly called him Poetic Force earlier, the Guineas, when it was Poetic Flair, of course, multiple Group 1 winner for Jim Bolger, but he's starting to bubble up quite nicely now, isn't it? We're only a couple of weeks away from the big ones.
It's that time of year. This week is, in my opinion, where the sort of flat season really gets rocking and rolling, and the Rowley Mile was very informative. We saw some proper trials, in my opinion.
Yes.
The Craven was a very deep trial, and we saw dual Group 1 winning 2-year-old just enhancing his sort of profile. Yeah,
we'll be talking about him in the next gap, but for now, as you'll see, the horses are in the parade ring for the second race here at Chelmsford, and we'll be having a look at them in a few moments. Yeah, when looking back at the Craven Meeting, Jess, I think obviously that was the day. It's the race, the meeting's named in honour of course, the Craven Stakes, but I think the whole concentration of the day was just really quite good. The group race sprint, some of the younger horses will come to the Wood Ditton. Wednesday was kind of the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a good card, wasn't it, Nick? And we saw some impressive performances and horses that had sort of high profiles and big reputations as such, and it didn't disappoint, really.
Didn't. And some of the younger horses, the lesser known ones, started things off with Amena winning, who was obviously the even money market leader, to break her maiden at the second attempt. It was her first run of the year. She might just make up into something quite useful indeed.
Yeah, you can see her breaking from stall 6 there under David Eydon, and she took a little bit of organising early doors. You could just see her once you got his cover. Ed Walker's filly went on the hood and was a little bit free in front, Queen of Comedy, and David just got a nice slipstream in that, and it was handy for him to just go and get that cover because she raced a little bit freshly early doors.
Something about Roger Varian and this particular race. I think this was his 5th win in the last decade. He knows just the profile filly for this race at this time of year.
Yeah, and I think he's got his team in good order, hasn't he?
He does. We'll come to later, yeah.
They've been... the horses that have been well supported in the market haven't really disappointed to date, and she travelled through this race really, really strongly, and I feel that when she steps up in grade and against more experienced individuals, I think it will suit her better. It may well suit her racing round a bend as such at times, you know, just to do things in the right fashion. But you can see David Egan was just trying to keep things nice and smooth, and once he took that sort of middle track run, she travelled so smoothly when he gave her daylight and sat into her, and she lengthened well when she hit the rising ground.
I think I'm right in saying, unless anything's come out subsequently, that certainly on the day Roger Varian was quite non-committal about the chance of the 1,000 guineas, because fundamentally it's 2.5 weeks on from breaking a maiden. Yes, she was impressive. He does say as well that she's going to get the mile. You can see the way that she runs. The mile shouldn't be a problem. That was 7 furlongs on the day. Do you think they'll just lean against dipping into sort of a classic battle so early in her career?
I suppose to see how she comes out of it, but at the moment she will definitely get the mile for sure, but I'd go softly and make sure you've got a really smart filly for the middle season, really.
I think she is just that. And she was victorious in the first race. So we'll see, 20s, 25s or so for the 1,000 guineas. That's just the period of time we're in. We'll find out a little bit nearer the time. She didn't have much form going into it. There was no form on offer, of course, in the Wood Ditton. There you are, 25 to 1 with Betfair for the Kipco 1,000 guineas, which is just 16 days away now. No form on offer, of course, in the Wood Ditton. That's the unique nature of the race. What did you make of the winner?
Well, it was a very smooth performance, wasn't it? He looked pretty smart, and you sort of get these strong Newmarket yards of unleashing their sort of best ammunition this time of year, and I feel that John Gosden's got a really smart colt in his hand. He did, he wasn't the quickest in the stride on this occasion, and you can see him there in the green colours, just sort of racing on the wing, but Frankie kept things nice and smooth, and he travelled he was eye-catching the way he went through the race, even though he was a little bit slow in stride early doors. Yeah, I like the winner, of course you do, Francesco Clemente, in the Peter Brandt colours over on the far side, the ARC-winning colours of a couple of years ago as they were. I've absolutely no doubt that, they've started him off over a mile, but I've no doubt that this horse is going to be getting 10 furlongs comfortably so. I would have thought so, and he's bred to be, he's Dubawi out of a Galileo mare. He's a beautifully bred individual, and I just love the way he went through the race. He probably, going forward, didn't learn that much on the occasion. He raced on the wing, but Frankie just rode like the best horse, and it proved so. I think there will be plenty of horses that will get further. Of course they will, out of this race. I think the second is just that type as well. Nice profile. I do think that State Event is one that I'm definitely going to keep on side. Another for Godolphin, who's a half-brother to the multiple Group 1 winner, the 1,000 guineas winner as well, Blue Bunting. It's just that kind of race. And looking back at the history of it, Mukadram was a winner a decade ago. He went and won an Eclipse. And Harbinger, I think, was beaten in the Wood Ditton as well on his career debut. So we are talking about the very, very basics of their career, the very first day. The winner was impressive, but you'd be foolish to rule out too many behinds going forward. I think the horse to take out the race for me was Kite Flyer. He wasn't that strong on the market, and in the paddock, the guys doing the racing TV on the day said he was very raw and was green, and as you went through the race, he would definitely take a massive jump forward of improvement, and typical one of Sir Michael Stout's, he will improve massively for his first start. Yeah, and the colours of Her Majesty the Queen, as mentioned there, Sir Michael Stout unleashed Harbinger in that very race 12, 13 years ago, as it would be now. So that was the Wood Ditton. We can take a look back at the Abernant Stakes, and this would have been a performance and a result which would have pleased you immensely. Yeah, I was delighted for the team. Chris Wall is a good mate of mine, and Ted Dirk has been riding her in a bit of a work at home, so it's very much a team effort for Chris Wall, and I just thought it was interesting dropping back to 6 furlongs. She showed so much speed through the race, didn't she? She almost could have done with the lead for a bit longer. She was definitely idling when she hit the front. You could see her in the Foostock colours on the outside there, under Jack Mitchell with the black cap, following Ryan Moore on the grey horse Guineas. Who was second on Gareth. Who was second, and Jack Mitchell was at pains. He could have just done with the race developing near him a little bit, and he was on the wing, and she just travelled so strongly throughout the race. It was a good performance. It was indeed. And quite a bit was made pre-race of the presence of 3-year-olds, notably Ebro River, that you can see there third from the right. Not often you see, or certainly in recent years, 3-year-old from the Abernant. Yeah, and he settled well under Jamie Spencer, didn't he? And he just didn't, it was just interesting that he sort of didn't finish off very strongly. He was a very smart 2-year-old for Hugo Palmer and the team. and it was a disappointing comeback run.
It was indeed. Where are they going to go with Double or Bubble? Because she's from a really rich family as well, going forward with Mix and Mingle in there as well. They're obviously going to have a crack at the top level with her, and why not?
Yeah, and she stays 6 furlongs very strongly. You know, she's very effective over 7 furlongs we've seen. But she, as a physical, and it was interesting hearing Chris get interviewed afterwards, she's got stronger and almost got quicker.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting. They've got to sort of have a go at Group 1, haven't they?
Platinum Jubilee. She's won at Ascot before. I know it's a different kettle of fish, of course, but having a crack there. If you say she's got faster, she's won the Abernant Group 3.
Stiff 6.
Yeah,
it should suit, shouldn't it? But
mapped it out.
I think I believe when she hit the front she wasn't doing much, so I think in that type of race you could ride her a bit more conservatively, not negatively, but just ideally taking the lead for a little bit longer.
Okay, Double or Bubble, who was the Group 3 winner of the Abernant. We ought to talk about the Craven, of course we ought to. It featured the long odds on Native Trail, who was European Champion Juvenile last year. A brilliant horse. We saw that at the Curragh. We saw that as well at Newmarket in the Dewhurst. A lot of people, and of course they say this, they don't love the way that he approaches or goes into the dip, but it doesn't really matter if he comes out like that, does it? Or is it going to find him out maybe on quicker ground up against better opposition? I don't know.
It's a concern, isn't it, for sure, but I keep hearing that he's not handling it, but he still gets the job done, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
And if he comes off the bridle, as long as he doesn't lose his balance and lose his rhythm, but you can see him there, he races in an economical fashion. In the Godolphin first colours there, you could see him under William Buick, and he's a very imposing individual, travels with a lot of quality, not behind the bridle, but just not really. He's a jockey's dream in many ways, because you can place him wherever you want, I would have thought, in a race. He's not going to race too keenly if he hasn't got cover, but you could just see him there in the mid-pack, and he's just a really, really impressive individual.
And while it was a good performance, of course it was, it wasn't necessarily... You didn't come away thinking that was earth-shattering and therefore he left it all behind, and in 2 weeks' time, well, you might as well not bother turning up because he's left his race behind in the Craven. You never know until the day, but you certainly didn't take that impression coming away from this, did you?
I don't think so. You could see him... It's interesting that he just takes a bit of organising. You can see him switching his leads as he's running down into the dip, and he definitely he's a horse that needs organising. William rides him beautifully and doesn't sort of go for everything in one go. He knows that's his sort of run style, and you can see him pulling the bit up in his mouth and keeping things nice and smooth. Once he's hit the rising ground, he sort of really sort of changes hands again. Yeah. And it was very much Hans and Neil stuff. He gives him a backhand sort of just inside the furlong pole there, and one flick in the backhand, and very much job done. And he galloped out strongly. He's got a very rounded action. Obviously it'd be a concern if the ground is really tight, but he's a dual Group 1 winner, and you know his run style. He sort of takes a bit of organised when the race develops. I actually think the tempo of the race in the Guineas will suit him better. It'll be, it's going to be a competitive field, and they're going to roll along at an even gallop.
And I'm going to say that what I said earlier, because it will get reeled out again. Unless I've missed something massive, no winner of the Craven's gone on to win the Guineas since Huft in 2004. But I can't think of, I was thinking about it earlier, I can't think of too many with the profile of this fella to even go to the Craven.
No, and going into this race, he's officially rated 122. He's, champion 2-year-old. He's a high-class individual, isn't he? You can't get away from it. And it was very much...
Do you know what, actually? I mean, Sir Henry Cecil ran Frankel in the Greenham. I suppose he could have run him in the Craven. He didn't, and we wouldn't even be talking about it in the same sort of historical context, would be. On the same day, Caribus worked on the track earlier that morning. Really, really revealing day for Charlie Appleby and the team.
Caribus is quite an explosive individual, isn't he? And I would have thought they were keen to keep things quiet. Give him a racecourse gallop, ideally, but not blow his top and take him racing. Just take a bit of the freshness out of him. And by all accounts, I was delighted how it unfolded. Obviously, these gallops are set up for the horse to shine as such, but it was very much job done. He sort of galloped through the line nice and strongly, clear of his horses he worked with. And it would have been a catered approach for sure, but I think the way they played it is good for him, because he's a horse who is quite an explosive type, and it was much better to give him a racecourse gallop as they've done than let him get excited on the racecourse. They've taken a bit of freshness out of him, given him a away day. It's not that far to travel.
No.
Perfect job done.
Simple as, if you were given the choice, simple as I ride Native Trail and that's that?
Yeah, I think so. Everything
It'd be really
here,
hard to get off him, wouldn't it?
It would.
I mean, you'd have to... Caribus was brilliant last year, of course, and he was famous for that agonising defeat at the same time. But it really would stop me in my tracks if I found out the news that William Buick's not going to be on Native Trail.
But it is interesting because I've heard Charlie be interviewed a few times recently, and it is William's choice. He said he'd guide him towards Native Trail if it was his call, but William's got the decision. So hence the reason why he rode in work the other day. You know, it'd be very easy if that was the case. William was going to slip with Native Trail. James would have ridden in work to get to know him. Do you know what I mean? So it's interesting how they're sort of leaving the door open for William to make his decision.
Native Trail up against Caribus in the Guineas, Godolphin strength. We haven't, of course, had the Greenham. I don't know how much we're going to find out tomorrow as regards the Guineas, if so much. Who do you think the likeliest winner of the Guineas is at this stage?
Interestingly, I had this conversation with a friend the other day at work, and I can't look elsewhere from Native Trail at the moment.
Yeah.
He was champion 2-year-old. He's done nothing to make you less positive about the performance in the Craven. He did it pretty smoothly, didn't he? He won. I know he beat Claymore, who's a lightly raced individual. You don't really know what you're getting with him, but he won 3.5 lengths, going away at the line, and under what I would call a sympathetic ride out. You know, he was given one backhand, and he wasn't fully extended.
Yeah.
So I'd be sticking with Native Trail. Obviously, we've got some Irish individuals that we've got to take into account for as well, but I just wouldn't be able to get away from Native Trail at the moment.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Luxembourg, as it was last year and the year before and the year before that. Aidan O'Brien doesn't run them in trials. Simple as. So, or certainly the ones that have gone on to win the Guineas. So we'll just have to see with them. I think we can also have a look at the performance of New London, another Godolphin winner on the day. Could just make up in quite a smart horse for a little bit further down the line. Don't know if it's going to be the Derby. We'll find out. He got quotes for it, of course he did, but it's quite a promising horse.
Yeah, it was a good performance, wasn't it, over the 10 furlongs here in this confined novice. And he travelled, you could pick him up from a long way out, Nick, couldn't you? He sort of did things smoothly. He took a little bit of organising when the race developed.
Yeah, I should say as well, by the way, Godolphin three-way go towards the final couple of furlongs. It's the red cap you're looking at for the winner.
Yeah, exactly. Under first choice jockey for Charlie Appleby, William Buick. He took a little bit of organising, but he's bred to sort of improve with time, and he's a really likeable type. It's interesting that John Gosden's, you'll have to pronounce that for me again. Aldous Huxley, who was very impressive at Kempton when drawn poorly, sort of set a good standard going into the race, and he was brushed aside pretty smoothly.
I mean, we're going to talk about the Feilden winner as well. You get the feeling he'd have been a leading player in that if he'd have turned up in that race a day later, wouldn't he?
I would have thought so, but the key thing is with these horses, you want to give them a good experience first run. If you're stepping up in that sort of company early doors, they're having harder races. You're trying to mould them and give them sort of experience while they can progress. And at the moment, he's obviously a later developing type. He's bred to be. Yeah, he's in very, very good hands.
He's got a Dante entry. It'd be reasonable to expect another. If they really, if it is going to be the Derby. Maybe going down one of the trial routes between then, early May, be it Chester, be it York, be it Linkfield, be it elsewhere.
Yeah, I would have thought that would be the next step, wouldn't it? I mean, I don't think the trip's going to be an issue. He looks like a horse who's going to sort of maintain that good gallop for a long period of time. So, again, it's just highlights the fact what a strong team of colts Charlie Appleby's got for his 3-year-old campaign.
Talking about the Derby winning jockey. Kirby doing his best to put us off. Thankfully, you had your head the wrong way round. Otherwise, I don't know if you'd have kept him cool.
I didn't see him, so that was good.
Easiest, isn't it?
He's a funny man.
Jockeys are making their way out for race 3. We'll continue looking at Newmarket and beyond, looking ahead in the gaps in between the races. Yeah, loved it. Jess, thank you very much indeed. And that fine blend, whether it's Tajala, the youthful exuberance, or the old pro that is Accidental Agent that's taken connections on, well, an incredible journey so far, and still plenty of chapters still to write, no doubt. We'll start with Tajala. That was very, very impressive. And first runner and a first winner for the freshman sire, Kessar. And I know actually when people talked about it at the time, you don't want to be packing them off to stud too soon. He was sent off at the end of his 2-year-old year, won a Mill Reef, didn't he, Kessar? But obviously he's imparted a fair bit of speed on this one in particular. Yeah,
and it's just noticeable under Andreazzini, just travelled so smoothly. They almost weren't going an even enough gallop, and they looked to go a solid gallop on the front end. You can see Jason Hart and Mark Johnson's horse just going a nice even gallop, and that horse got a little bit disorganised running down into the dip and actually stayed on again when it hit the rising ground. But Andrea was keen to pull out as the race developed, just approaching the 2-pole.
That's right, yeah.
And looked like it was going to get a bit lost, and you can see switching leads there a couple of times. And once Andrea sort of really gave this horse a proper squeeze, was very impressive and rolled back to the rail. Andrea was quick to put a stick through to correct this horse.
Yep.
And it's a really, really smooth victory.
Yeah, the bit after the race, I think, caught a few people's eyes as well. The fact that he ended up halfway over the heath. Took a while to pull up.
Yeah, I know people get really excited about that. My thing is with that is when you're asking a horse to pull up, they should want to pull up. So sometimes it just means they've had a racecourse experience. They're on the revs and they don't want to put. They
want to go home.
Yeah, exactly. So I just don't get too carried away about that. But I just thought it was a really smart performance. I would have thought on a level track, or for example at Ascot for the Coventry, will be a perfect sort of next step, I would have thought.
I think it'll be Norfolk, won't it? 5 furlongs. It's related actually to a Royal Ascot winner in the form of our dad, who won a Windsor Castle as well. So it's just speed. And
yeah, the Dams by Society Rock, who was a horse I knew very well for James Fanchel.
We don't talk about him, do we?
High class indivitel, and
Did we? There was a story with him, was there? You used to ride him, didn't you?
I got dropped off him.
Yeah,
Is that what we tried to?
I'm fair play.
Well remembered, Nick.
Don't remember that you rode Zeffirino and things like that, but that moment, I think I remember speaking to you about it and saying, "Oh, what a brilliant winner he was of the Sprint Cup or the Diamond Jubilee or whatever it was." But I was quickly corrected.
I've got over that now.
Clearly.
Taken a bit of counselling, but I got there in the end.
Clearly. Your good friend Pat Cosgrove, of course, the rider.
He ratted me off it, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Who needs enemies? Should we look at the Feilden Stakes and yet more success for Roger Varian, who, like Charlie Appleby's, had a bit of a week to remember.
Yeah, he's a young trainer who's going places. He's got a strong team of horses, and that was just highlighted this week, wasn't it? You can see David Egan there in his familiar colours, his retained colours and shape visor, and I thought early doors was struggling to get this horse into a rhythm. Obviously it's a messy race, you can see them, they weren't going quick early doors, but once you got that cover in behind Andrew Balding's horse, it was just a bit easier.
He's quite likeable in his own way. He's probably maybe an archetype of the development from 2 to 3 that you can see in certain horses.
Yeah, and for me, you see him. He's by olden times who we don't see many of those types around really.
Yeah.
He was a high class sort of staying horse for this owner, and he's a horse you'd imagine will keep progressing with time as a family have done. But I just thought it was a really smooth performance, and you can see him. He just travelled, got into a nice rhythm in the end. It took him a while to do that, and as the race has picked up, you can see Joe Fanning dictating on the front end. Yeah. And as things have clicked along, just approaching the sort of half mile from home, David just looks a bit more comfortable, and he was very mindful not to get left behind as he was. This is what good jockeys do, Nick. They're aware that the race is going to develop, and on a straight track like Newmarket, you can sort of move forward without using too much horse and place yourself before the sort of sprint home develops.
We've had this to him. He only had the career debut in December, ran once in February as well. This was the turf debut. Got an entry in the Dante. Would you anticipate seeing him there?
I would have thought so. He's going to stay well, isn't he? I would have thought, and potentially racing on a slightly more conventional track, not up the straight wall, suit better where they race a bit more compactly in front of him. But when he hit the rising ground, he galloped out really strongly, and it was just a smart performance from a horse who you'd imagine is going to improve with time and stepping up and trip a little bit.
We'll talk about, of course, you referenced, I'm talking about Half to being the Craven to Guineas winner 18 years, and it's 7 years now since Golden Horn won this, and maybe he's a lesser known type, and he went on to win the Dante when I think Jack Hobbs was the pick of the stable, but that was the shot in the arm this race probably needed. Do you see him as a lively one for the Derby? Obviously we've got plenty of chapters left to write as regards trials and things for that race.
I think he's a horse going forward that's going to. He's an exciting horse to have around. I hate to pigeonhole him too soon. Just let him. I'm sure that they'll take in a trial and go from there. But he just enhanced his credentials with that performance on. Was it Thursday?
It was yesterday.
And I keep and I don't know what day of the week it is. That's the problem, isn't it?
That's the Society Rock effect. Should you have a look at the old boy as well, Accidental Agent, who's been an absolutely storming horse for all connected, not least the family obviously owning, breeding, and just about everything else besides. Accidental Agent. It was a fair price. Seems to pop up at those kind of prices now, but of course he boasts Group 1 success in the not so distant past.
Yeah, he won at the highest level, and he's obviously a yard favourite. I don't think this is the race.
No. Is it?
No, it's not.
I don't think we have. Well, nevertheless,
this is won by Michael Williams' horse in the red cap, Coast.
Let's talk about this one as well, under an inspired Marco Gianni, and we were talking about. I was interested in that interview that he did with Lydia yesterday when we were talking about his riding arrangements, how they've shifted around, and he's picking up rides for all sorts of different trainers, which is the champion apprentice, what you want to see. Yeah,
and it's interesting. I saw him. He was in Lambourne the other day. He's riding out for Charlie Hills on a regular basis.
Yeah.
He's got an agreement to ride for the Green Team Racing as well. So he's with Stuart's help. He's moulding himself into he's gaining good contacts, and Stuart's very, very keen for him to broaden his horizons while maintaining a good relationship with himself.
Right, this is the Accidental Agent success. You can see there right at the back of the field, the distinctive colours, and George Adobe in the saddle.
Yeah, he's a really... he must be loved in the yard. He's obviously been around for a good while. He's 8 years of age now. This was a strong handicap. He's not the force of old,
no,
by any means. Last year, he sort of wasn't as solid as he has been. There was a period of time where he wasn't racing with any enthusiasm, but they've really got him back on track, and the strongly run 7 furlongs here suited. You can see Georgia knows the horse extremely well. She won him last year on the July course, and you can just see her there, keeping him amongst horses, keeping him sweet. He's very effective on straight tracks, and it was quite noticeable from a good way out that Georgia hadn't really gone for everything and got him rolling into the dip, and it was all on hand and heel stuff, and then just going past the furlong pole, she picked the stick up, and he really, really wanted it and galloped through the line strongly. Yeah,
I think that's the key. George Adobe's got such a good association with him, be it on the racetrack, but obviously from knowing him at home as well. And she said afterwards, once he'd passed one horse, you could feel that he was enjoying it, and she'd know him better than anyone else would. So she knew it was probably a very going day for Accidental Agent, who does and can go well fresh.
Yeah, and I think that's a key thing to note, isn't it? He's after a break, Eve had a good day actually. I think she had 3 winners on the day, 2 winners at Bath and a winner here at Newmarket, and has obviously got the team in really good spirits. They're nice and healthy, and it's just great to get the old boy whose head's back in front.
He's still, for a horse that, his best days, the Group 1 winning days behind him, he's picking up races. He's obviously giving everyone plenty of joy, and he's obviously still pretty enthusiastic for his racing career. He's rated 104 still, so he's no bad number.
No, and he's sort of not the force of old, but he's still operating at a high level, and I'm sure that the connections will just keep him ticking away, keep running him as fresh as they can do, and just keep him happy.
Well, the nice thing is, as we look back at the Craven meeting, we're kind of halfway point as regards to the trials and things, because we've got that glorious day at Newbury to look forward to tomorrow, really, with the Fred Darling, with the Greenham, of course, big handicaps as well, the John Porter Stakes as well. So it's quite an exciting time of the year. Yeah, completely. And I think tomorrow, the Greenham race itself is a strong trial. It's a small field, but they're all closely matched. You've got Group 1 winners in there. Lusail, who was a high-class individual for Richard Hannon, who's got 2 runners in the race. Small field, but they're all sort of closely matched with ratings around sort of 110 to 115 mark. And Native Trail aside, Craven winner aside, who is the horse you are most taking out of Craven week? That is a very good question. I would say it would definitely be Native Trail, but if I haven't got him as an option, I thought Henry Candy's horse on yesterday, who won the last Twilight Calls, was a very good performance. That's right. David Probert's body language through the race was, as confident as you see. He's had a really strong winter. Yes. And he's definitely a horse to follow going forward. He's the rider as well. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Wasn't necessarily you were asked to pick a rider to follow this year, as in like an emerging star, and rather than going for a younger, you've gone for one that is very much becoming the present star, if you see what I mean, in David Probert. You believe that he's going to have a hell of a year. Well, and everything would indicate that. He's attached to Andrew Balding's yard, who in the last few years have gone from strength to strength. They've got a lot of horses, big numbers. They're training for all the right owner breeders. They've got a massive ownership base. Yeah. I was lucky enough to do a staff training day there recently, and facilities are second to none for a single training centre. They've got their own gallops,
and David Probert's a massive part of the team there, and obviously with Oisin Murphy around this year, it's a big year for him.
It is indeed. Right, we're going to go and have a look at the horses in the parade ring for the next here at a very sunny Chelmsford.